Good Friday afternoon to you. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns talk as they get ready for that home opener against the Texans Sunday, 1 o'clock. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast, talking plenty of Browns. And we will begin by talking plenty of Browns as well. Out in Berea, some news today, a little bit of a surprise. Anthony Walker on IR. He will miss the next 3 games minimum as he has a hamstring injury that they felt would keep him out. So Anthony Walker on IR was the leading tackler in that game against the Chiefs. Also ruled out, in addition to Odell Beckham Jr., Chris Hubbard. Jedrick Wills questionable, as is J.C. Treader and Anthony Schwartz, both questionable as well. So Chris Hubbard out, Jedrick Wills questionable. What it means is the Browns have to work through some things, not only for their left tackle, their starting left tackle is Wills questionable, Hubbard, who replaced him, out. So questionable there with the starting left tackle, but also with the middle linebacker, Anthony Walker, out as well. Kevin Stefanski addressed some of the issues the Browns are looking at personnel-wise for the Texans.
He did a nice job. He's a big part of what we do. Obviously, schematically, X's and O's, he's a big part of who we are. He's a great leader. He's going to continue to lead, even though he's not playing. But he's going to support his teammates. We'll work through it. It's something that we've talked about, and we'll see when we get to the game. We'll see what we're going to do. But we have a plan, obviously, to rotate in some linebackers.
Who takes the spot at the starting line?
Yeah, I think we'll work through it. Malcolm Smith's a candidate. Elijah Lee's a candidate. I would tell you, Scott, that you see who's available to you on game day, and you make a ton of decisions based on that, and that's really across the board. I can think of certain scenarios where we didn't have a starter in there on defense, and we did a little bit less of this or a little bit more of that. So that's the natural thing to do when you have a guy playing maybe out of position. Sometimes you have a guy playing for the first time. All those things go into how you construct a game plan.
Let's welcome in Doug Lesmerises, columnist for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So Doug, definitely not going to have the starting middle linebacker, the guy that is the signal caller. It'll be interesting to see. That could be John Johnson, the safety. And you probably, it's 50-50 whether you have your starting left tackle. And if you don't have your starting left tackle, you're going to third on the depth chart, likely with James Hudson as the left tackle.
So let's do linebacker first, right? So on our Gotta Watch the Tape podcast on Thursday and our Orange and Brown Talk feed at cleveland.com, Ellis Williams broke down how Anthony Walker played basically every snap at middle linebacker last week for the Browns. And then they rotated 4 guys through the other spot because they're really only playing 2 linebackers. They might play 3 linebackers more this week, but they were rotating Malcolm Smith, Sione Takitaki, Mac Wilson, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in that other spot. But Anthony Walker's the anchor, man. Like, he's the anchor. And you look at, BJ Goodson, the guy that he replaced, just signed with the Jets like a couple days ago. Like, he didn't even have a job when the season started. So it's interesting how important and fundamental Anthony Walker became to the Browns defense, like right away, as soon as he got here. So this is a big deal, right? Like, it is a big deal, but they mixed and matched at the other linebacker spot last week. So they're just going to have to try again, some version of that. But it's harder to do when maybe you're mixing and matching at both linebacker spots instead of just one. I don't think the rookie JOK is like a candidate to replace Anthony Walker, but it might be the result that he just takes more snaps at the other spot as you're trying to figure out guys moving in and out, replacing Anthony Walker. So that's a big deal, right? I mean, you can't, I don't know, if you're going to rank the most important guys to the Browns defense, I mean, you get to Anthony Walker in the top 5 for sure. Left tackle, I think you have to be a little bit less worried about. The Chiefs last week started a 6th-round pick from this draft. James Hudson is a 4th-round pick from this draft, and he's their 3rd option at left tackle. So, that's good. Hey, our 3rd option, first option's like a top 10 pick. Second option's a veteran guy who's a swing tackle who used to be a starter. 3rd option's a 4th-round pick. That's pretty good. Sometimes your 4th option is like guy on the street. So I feel like it's not ideal necessarily to play a rookie 4th-round pick at left tackle, but when you're down to your 3rd option, he's a good 3rd option. and the Chiefs did it as a plan last week. So I'm less concerned about Hudson than I am about Walker.
Some good news on the injury front. Grant Delpit not listed. So he is expected to go and expected to make his NFL debut. It's another thing that they could do. They could have some form of three safety look where they use guys as a hybrid safety type linebacker. So Grant Delpit, good to go. As of Friday, is good news for that defense.
Yeah. Listen, man, they played MJ Stewart 60 snaps last week. That was nobody's plan. No Grant Delpit. Ronnie Harrison gets booted after 5 snaps. So they kind of stuck with the 5 DB look a lot. Again, with what Houston does, with how much they maybe want to run the ball, how many tight ends they might have on the field, the Browns are going to have to adjust to that. So it may be just more linebackers anyway. But man, how interesting is it going to be to see Grant Delpit on the field finally? You have to tamp down your expectations a little bit, just based on the fact that he's never played and he is coming off a serious injury. But there's a chance, right, that this guy is sort of like a defense-changing playmaker. I've said it a million times. He was picked one spot ahead of Antoine Winfield. Antoine Winfield helped the Bucs reach the Super Bowl last year. So a playmaking safety who can cover and hit and be aggressive and do all those things like that, a guy like that really makes a difference. So this is a great way to sort of ease him in the next couple weeks with Houston and Chicago. But he's one of these guys that has a chance to be a huge difference maker for this defense if he's healthy.
So Kevin Stefanski getting ready to get his Browns to go and have the home debut, and it will be the first time Kevin Stefanski gets to listen to the Browns fans in a full First Energy Stadium. It's something the Browns head coach is looking forward to. Here's Kevin Stefanski about his first home game.
Okay, excited for the opportunity this Sunday versus a really good football team coming into our house. Really excited to see that place at full capacity. I haven't seen that yet. I've heard the stories, so looking forward to all of Northeast Ohio coming up for this game. I'm looking forward also to, or not, I shouldn't say I'm looking forward to. I get the message out that Coach Stefanski wants you in your seats when kickoff hits. All right, no empty seats, and I want full-throated effort for 60 minutes. So get out of the Muni lot, get into your seat, and then you can go back to the Muni lot after the game. But you make a difference, and I really believe that. When your home field advantage in the NFL is just such a big deal, and I think our fans make a difference. You talk about 3rd down, 4th down. We'll be looking for any delays of game from them or false starts. Those type of things are direct correlation to our crowd. And then when we're on offense, looking to hear a pin drop. So excited to see that, excited to experience that for the first time.
And I kind of like that. He wants the crowd loud and isn't afraid to call for it on Friday.
Is there a test? I feel like there's a test coming. That sounded like an 11th grade geometry teacher. I want you in your seats with the number 2 pencil. 9:01. We will have a 50-minute test, and then you can go back to your shenanigans when the test is over. You better be. People better be in their seats, man. This guy. But also, little advice for Coach. I hope he takes a moment, right? And you have to sort of make yourself do it because he's locked in. Let's win this game. But whether it's right before kickoff, whether it's when he comes out after halftime, he's got to take a moment to absorb it, right? To look around at this crowd, at this fan base, this stadium, this opportunity, and lock that in, that he's the leader of this team. And look at all these people that are here to support him and to support this team. Because if you let it fly by and you're just so worried about, filling out the circles in your test, you can miss it a little bit. You have to make yourself do it, Kevin Stefanski. So I try to do this in my life, Dave. There was a moment when my daughter was young and we were excited. She was going on a roller coaster and she was so excited. And I said to myself, lock this in. And I have a terrible memory, but that's like one of the 8 memories I have in my head because I made myself remember it. Kevin Stefanski, make yourself remember a moment from Sunday of that feeling, being there with the crowd. And fans, please listen to Mr. Stefanski or you're going to get 5 points off on your test.
I have no doubt the way this city feels about Kevin Stefanski, they will listen to him without question. All right, before we go to break, got to ask you this one. Heading into week 2, Are you more convinced, less convinced, or equally as convinced that the Browns are what you thought they were before week 1?
Pretty equally, but if I would slide away, it would be more. Because to come out and score touchdowns on the first 3 drives of the season at Kansas City, that's like, man, that's taking care of some business. I thought that was really good. Defensively, there were some moments. We know Patrick Mahomes is amazing. We know Tyreek Hill is amazing. John Johnson III on that 70-plus yard touchdown, will he play it that way again next time? He's a really good safety. He just kind of had a moment there, right? Stuff happens. Will that happen again? Will the punter drop the ball again? Will Nick Chubb fumble in a moment like that again? There are parts of it that are like, man, you can't what if yourself. Listen, the Chiefs won and the Browns didn't. But the Browns lost for a couple moments that, to me, are not necessarily indicative of anything. I don't know that anyone's worried about a Nick Chubb fumbling problem this season. Jamie Gillen's a really good athlete. I don't think people are worried that he can't hold on to a snap. And John Johnson III, they signed for big money. You think he's going to make plays like that this year? So a lot of this stuff was like, yep, that's it. I thought they'd lose. They did lose. I thought the Chiefs would find a way to rally. They did. But to me, that's the Browns. That's the 13-4 team that I picked for this season. There was nothing that shook me from that. And even to go out offensively and to execute like that was maybe even a little more than I expected, especially without Odell.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought they were a little bit better even than I thought they were going to be, and I, like you, think they're going to be pretty good. I think the defense will get its footing, and you might see even a little bit more domination on that defensive side of the ball. Doug Lesmerises, columnist for cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we'll hear about Jadeveon Clowney from Joel Bitonio. And Kevan Stefanski talks about the Browns' young wide receiving core, the youngsters in the wide receiving core. Sports4CLE, you'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns with Doug Lesmerises from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So Jadeveon Clowney gets to face the Houston Texans, one of his former teams. Joel Bitonio talked about what he has seen from Clowney going against him throughout training camp and week in, week out.
Oh, he's been good. And, practice with him and Miles and Malik and both Malik's, has been a battle. And you could just see, obviously, why he was like the first overall pick, like his athletic ability and his strength and the way he can set an edge, but also like his pass rush ability. Like I know the sack numbers aren't always there, but like he puts pressure on the quarterback. He puts attention, on him. And he's made some plays. I think you saw it. He was step by step with Miles on that sack and had that. I mean, you got to be a pretty freaky athlete to tackle that jet sweep that the play he made there. Like those type of things are just like special plays that he's going to bring to the defense.
And Doug Lesmerises, I think when you look at some of the things that he did, you can see why he was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. There were some flashes where it was like, a guy that big shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, that's the good thing about him being here is that the Browns don't need it 70 snaps a game from him at that level because they have a guy on the other side who can do it 70 snaps a game. And so flashes are enough in a lot of ways, right? And setting the edge and making that one play. And listen, man, I mean, is it not every Browns fan's dream to have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney meet at the quarterback and make a Patrick Mahomes sandwich? So, to have a moment like that at a critical time, I think that's what everybody was looking for. But it's why this is a good fit in a lot of ways with the contract, the money, the length of the contract, how he fits into the defense, the expectations for him, all of that. I think we got a good dose of that, of how it's going to work. And I think he's the guy, I think he can I think he can win a game for the Browns this year, right? I think that can be a Clowney game, but it doesn't have to be a Clowney season. And that's why I think this is right for him, and it's right for the franchise.
All right, Anthony Schwartz in his first NFL game looked pretty good, and he impressed his head coach. Kevin Stefanski talked about Schwartz's performance last week.
Yeah, I thought he did a nice job, Tom. So much of it for rookies is knowing what to do, and I think we're really fortunate with Anthony. He's very, very smart. So we knew that part of the reason we drafted him, quite honestly. So the ability to play all over the formation, get lined up, all the nuance, all the details that go into winning versus man, he did a nice job.
Jarvis said he almost had a mentally perfect game. How rare is that to see in a young guy?
Yeah, it's very rare, and you know, I think of Donovan Peoples-Jones last year, who played a very similar role for us. You kind of forgot that kid's a rookie. You know, you don't see that very often.
And Doug, what I would think is you'll see Schwartz and Peoples-Jones kind of alternated. I think it's going to be game plan specific as to which the Browns lean on more. Is it Anthony Schwartz? Is it Donovan Peoples-Jones?
I've been a Schwartz skeptic in terms of how much he's going to really impact the offense this year. And they, the Browns said this week that he took some chunk of the snaps that Odell Beckham Jr. would have had he played. And so I think we have to take the Schwartz performance in that context that, that guy didn't play. They also said Schwartz would have had a package, that he certainly would have had a role in the game. And then when he had opportunities, he mostly took advantage of them. Now, on the other side, Donovan Peoples-Jones had one target the whole game. And again, Scott Patsko, our guy at cleveland.com, has been mentioning that a lot. He can't believe Donovan Peoples-Jones only had one target. So this is how it's going to work with the offense. Not everybody's going to get a big role every week. And so if you're trying to get David Njoku involved, Jarvis is going to get his, someone's going to suffer a little bit. I just remain curious to see when Odell Beckham Jr. is back and playing a full role, and you have Jarvis, then how do Schwartz and Peoples-Jones work in? Obviously it seems like Rashard Higgins is going to maybe even have the toughest time trying to get a main role in this offense. But I thought it was in that way, I thought it was a good indication of how they will work OBJ in when OBJ's out there, because they did it with the rookie, doing some of the OBJ stuff. And again, to Anthony Schwartz's credit, he did a pretty decent facsimile of what you would want from a deep threat receiver. So credit to him for that. But I remain in the long run, when your receivers are healthy, I'm curious how Schwartz and Peoples-Jones work in game to game.
Yeah, and again, I think it'll be, what do they decide they're going to try to exploit on any given day. So CBSSports.com came up with rookie power rankings. So number 1, offensive tackle Rashawn Slater from the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 2, Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from the Detroit Lions. Number 8, Greg Newsome from the Browns. Number 14, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from the Browns. They only ranked 15 Browns rookies, both in the top 15. And Greg Newsome, you didn't hear him because they didn't throw his way. So that's a pretty good indication he played pretty well.
I was on Greg Newsome toast alert last week. I was very hey, listen, man, he's a rookie. It's Patrick Mahomes. This guy might have a bad day. And he didn't. He gave up one catch for 4 yards, right? So now, you look at, I think Denzel Ward gave up 5 catches on 7 targets. So it's okay, well, does that mean Greg Newsome's better than Denzel Ward? It's just the way offenses work. And if Denzel's dealing with Tyreek Hill a lot, and then, who's their second best receiver? There's a drop off. But the bottom line is the most dangerous passing offense in the league did not attack the Browns rookie. They did not say, let's go after that guy no matter what. Let's make our money on the back of Greg Newsome. So that is a good sign. And JOK is an interesting case because, again, as we said, they rotated those 4 linebackers through almost close to equal snaps. They all played 18 to 24 snaps. So JOK could get used situationally. They could use him on the downs and distance and formations where he had the best chance to succeed. Greg Newsome's just out there. There wasn't a whole lot of Greedy last week. So Greg Newsome, this is not situational. This is dude, you're playing. You're a starting cornerback for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl. So from that standpoint, again, yes, they didn't throw at him a lot, but it's a good sign that they didn't throw at him a lot. So well done by Greg Newsome.
I would agree. And again, it's going to be different each week based on game plan. And when you have the talent to do that, that's usually a really good thing for the defense as well as the offense. All right, Kevin Stefanski talked about the challenge the Browns face with the Texans offense, very much a different offense than they faced against the Chiefs.
Yeah, they have good players and it's a good scheme. That's a huge challenge for our defense, and I think this is a team that wants to run the ball. They have the guys to do it, so we're going to have to stop the run. I think their offensive line is big. They can move people. The quarterback's under center. He's in the pistol. They have a variety of runs. They have RPOs. Some of the Baltimore Ravens stuff shows up with Coach Coley's past. So it's a huge challenge.
Now, having said that, it's not the challenge the Browns faced in Week 1 with the Chiefs. They just don't have the horses, being the Texans.
We can be real here, Dave. Right? Can we keep it real?
Absolutely.
On the show?
I would prefer that.
I mean, Kevin Stefanski. Credit to Kevin Stefanski for keeping the blinders on. Listen, we're not taking anything for granted here, but the Browns played the best team in the AFC last week. The Texans played the worst team in the AFC last week. So the Texans have a win, the Browns have a loss, but methinks perhaps that, we got kind of a little bit of a different view of both those teams. So, we talked about on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, someone said there's a four-headed monster, and I just had a good line, so I'm going to repeat it. They said the Texans' backfield was a four-headed monster, and I said, how come every time there's multiple people doing a job in sports, we call it a blank-headed monster? Because a monster implies danger. This is not a monster. I said it's like a four-headed hamster. I don't know. They got four guys. It's like three running backs and Tyrod, but does anyone scare you? It's fine. There's a lot of them. Are any of them particularly good? No. So, what are you going to do? Now, if the Browns come out and lay an egg, that would be a very bad sign. But this is an absolute take care of business kind of game for Cleveland, and I appreciate Kevin Stefanski keeping the fellas on task.
Yeah, again, the talent level is very Browns up here, Texans down here. Doesn't mean Texans can't win, but if both teams play their best game, it's not a close game. Doug Lesmerises, columnist for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear Riddick talking about Baker Mayfield. We'll also take a look at some storylines for the Browns-Texans game. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns football, getting ready for the home opener against the Texans. So Riddick, former player for the Browns, also a guy who has worked in a number of front offices and is a candidate to become a GM in the not-too-distant future. Talked about Baker Mayfield, what he sees on ESPN's Get Up.
That last interception was going to be exactly what people remember Baker for in that game, simply because it was the last play, and it's the play where they're driving down and they're trying to win this football game, and it's the play that people are going to remember. Although there were plenty of other things that went wrong in that game and errors that people committed that contributed to the loss. And the reason why I singled that play out was this. I believe he's a franchise quarterback. I believe he's someone who deserves a long-term contract, and they have found the perfect fit. But he knows as well as all the people who are Browns fans know this. When you get paid the way he's going to get paid, and I think he deserves to get paid, he's going to need to be the guy who can make everything right and make those plays in crucial situations, just like Patrick does for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just like he does when people feel like it's most dire and it's most dark for Kansas City, Patrick does something that pulls them out of it and makes them win more games than they lose. And that's the expectation for Baker Mayfield now. If you're going to be paid like a franchise quarterback and you're going to be considered a serious AFC conference contender and a Super Bowl title contender, he has to make those plays. It seems as though he has that awareness about him. Now, let's see what they do going forward. But I absolutely believe 1 through 53, they're loaded for bear. They can deal with any team in the NFL.
And, Doug, I agree with Louis Riddick wholeheartedly. I think he makes some valid points. You're sitting here laughing like you always do. So go ahead.
I love Louis Riddick. That clip was so much of three men watching another man talk.
Well, it's the guy that has the most credibility out of them.
I know, but the shot. Why was the shot? Why did ESPN have the camera on the three guys? Like, Greeny's drinking coffee. Louis Riddick is talking, and like
they should have been eating popcorn. It's entertaining. Again, the points that he made, I think, are very valid, though. I agree with him.
Oh, the points were great. Louis Riddick is super smart. Here's the thing. I mean, like, we get caught up, I think, in the game-ending drives because they're important and because it feels like every game that's on the TV so far in the NFL, it's like a game-ending drive. It's like the Ravens and Raiders are trading game-ending drives, and the Giants and Washington Thursday night, last night, they were trading game-ending drives, and Taylor, no offense to him, I can't remember which it is, Heineke, like, gets it done, they do it, whatever. And the Giants come back and then they miss the field goal. So you want your quarterback to do that. The thing is, a lot of those guys, it feels like sometimes the game-ending drives, there's like some chaos involved, and mobility matters even more for a quarterback, and that's never going to be Baker's number one strength. I think moving them down the field in must-win situations is going to rely on getting the ball out, making smart, quick decisions, making throws. I still think he didn't think that last Chiefs defender who tripped him up, I think he was blocked. I think Baker thought he was blocked and he had an escape route and he wasn't that worried about it. And he was going to try to make a throw and maybe was thinking about making a throw to the tight end to make a play. I know he said he was trying to throw it out of bounds. I just think it was like a little weird. I wouldn't get wrapped up in the fact that it didn't happen in that drive. I know Baker has, coming into this season, had 6 game-winning fourth-quarter drives in his career, which is the same number as Patrick Mahomes. Now, maybe that's because the Chiefs win so big and so early, they don't have to have game-winning drives. But I think there can be a tendency to overreact in the moment to like, well, he didn't have a game-winning drive. And it's like, those are really important, and it's impressive when you watch other quarterbacks do that. But he has done it in his career before, and they're just, I still think, finding their groove on exactly how do they win a game in the final 2, 3, 4 minutes. And I think still some of that's on Kevin Stefanski to get the right play calls. I think they come out and they're a little tentative sometimes off the bat, running the ball in screens and stuff. And I think maybe you want to get Baker throwing quick passes earlier in those game-winning potentially drives. So, but I agree with everything Louis Riddick. I would trust Louis Riddick to run my NFL team, and I think he's right on the money with everything he said about Baker. The only thing I didn't like in what he said is whenever you compare Baker to Patrick Mahomes, because it just doesn't serve anybody, right? I mean, there are franchise quarterbacks, and then there's like that guy. So Baker Mayfield can be a lot of people as a franchise quarterback. I just don't find any use in comparing him to Patrick Mahomes because he's never going to be that, and that's okay.
Yeah, there might be 2 Patrick Mahomes in the history of the NFL by the time we get done with it. Right now, there's only 1. So to your point, yeah. So Pro Football Focus has storylines to watch in each and every game. Storylines for the Browns game. Browns offense should face little resistance in this matchup. And I see where they're going with that.
That's why I really, and again, we disagreed on our Orange and Brown Talk game preview podcast that was out Friday morning. A lot of the smarter people on that show are in, thinking Browns come out and run the ball, do what they do that Kevin Stefanski offense, get a lead, put it away in the fourth quarter. And I want to see them chuck it around because I think this offense needs practice at that, right? And again, Baker threw for 321 last week. My prediction before the game last week was Baker throws for 350. My prediction before the game this week is Baker throws for 350 because I can't really come up with ideas. I just repeat myself. If you've watched the show, you know that. So I would like to see that. Like, I think they know they can run over the Texans, right? I mean, does anyone doubt that they could get Chubb and Hunt 100 yards each and dominate the game and dominate time of possession? I don't know that anyone doubts that. So I'm not saying like dork around, but on the other hand, I think it's an opportunity, right? DPJ only had 1 target last week. Let's get him involved. Let's have Jarvis have a big game. Let's test the tight ends and give them plenty of balls to catch. Like, I just think I wouldn't mind seeing a Kevin Stefanski version of an air raid offense for a little bit against a team that you think you could win a lot of different ways. So, yes, I do think the Browns offense should and will dominate this game, but I'm very curious how they go about doing that.
Yeah, and they could very well decide they're just going to run all over them as well. All right, Doug Lesmerises, columnist for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we will hear from plenty of Houston Texans talking about what they see on tape with the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Getting ready for the home opener, Browns and Texans, 1 o'clock Sunday. Lovie Smith, defensive coordinator for the Texans, former head coach of the Bears, among others, and Justin Reid talked about what they see in Baker Mayfield, Browns quarterback.
I mean, I kind of go on, this is who a player is. We talk about what has happened here in the past. Don't go off it a lot. Same thing with players. They have a history, and I know Baker's history, He's been a playmaker all his life, and I don't know what all happened early in his career, but I know right now he's one of the better quarterbacks, playing in our league, and that's what the challenge we have.
That comes with experience. I mean, I still remember when it was his second year. He was aggressive, trying to force everything in every window. So he's just been seasoned with some more experience, picks his windows a little bit better. He has a lot of talent around him to help take the load off of his shoulders. And Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and then I know Odell's down this week, but Jarvis Landry and Njoku and Austin Hooper. So he has a lot of all-stars around him to help him be successful as well.
Doug, sounds like Texans trying to find a way to minimize the damage that the offense will cause them.
It's interesting. Lovie's new in Houston because he was coaching the Fighting Illini in the Big Ten for the last several years. But Justin Reid, that's a smart guy. It's interesting that this is the Browns. This is the 4th time in the last 5 years that the Browns and the Texans have played. This is a 3rd place game. The Texans were 4-12 last year. The Browns were 11-5. They're playing each other because they both finished 3rd. So the Texans are actually an interesting read on this, right? They played them in 17, 18, 20, and now in 21. So to have a guy like Justin Reid talk about the progression of Baker that he has sort of seen firsthand is interesting football analysis. But yeah, there's you can kind of see them there. And Mary Kay Cabot has been saying this all season with the Browns. It's just it's pick your poison. And so the Browns can kind of pick it, but also the Texans can kind of pick it. How they decide to maybe try to defend them, which also again maybe goes back to listen. They said good things about Baker, but I don't know. But if you sell out to stop the run and say, okay, Odell's not here, Baker, it's on you, right? So, but they know the deal. And all teams like this that aren't playoff level teams are going to know that they're going to have their hands full with the Browns offense.
So an interesting perspective on the other side of the ball. Running back Mark Ingram is the lead back for the Texans. Is a little bit familiar with the Browns from his time with the Ravens. Here's what he said he sees from this Browns defense.
They get after it. Obviously, those 2 defensive ends, you have to find ways to neutralize them and to make them, not have a heavy impact on the game. You don't want them to take over the game because they can, and they will. The secondary, they're opportunistic. They're the linebackers, they fly around, fly to the ball. They just play well on defense. They're a well-coached defense. I've played them for the past 2 years, twice a year, and they just always do a good job. They're well coached, and they get after it. So you just have to make sure you're sound on your assignment, sound on your execution, know what you have to do, how you have to do it, and execute it. And you have to do that for 60 minutes. You have to be physical. You can't turn the ball over, and have to make plays, because they're going to contest you, they're going to challenge you. So when your number's called and the ball is headed to you, you have to take care of the football, and you have to make the plays. So they're a good defense, and it's a challenge that we're looking forward to.
And Ingram is part of that running back by committee that they employ. And, again, he's a guy that knows the Browns defense firsthand.
Now, to be fair, he knows the Browns defense firsthand, and like the Ravens and Browns played like an 83-81 game last year where the Browns didn't stop the Ravens at all. So, he could have said that. If he would have said, the Browns, they're a defense that last year we scored like 100 points on them and we do whatever we, that's the real thing. Mark Ingram is being very nice there in a lot of ways. But the other thing he didn't say is, man, I wish I was playing the Browns defense with Lamar Jackson, because I'll tell you what, that guy's hard to stop. The Browns have trouble with him sometimes. So, this is one of those, Mark Ingram knows him, but it's, the Browns have famous guys now too. So Mark Ingram, who knows football, starts with those ends. And it's just kind of, that's how everyone's going to talk about the Browns. You say like the famous guys, then you say some cliche stuff, then maybe you get to some analysis at the end. But they have 2 overall number 1 picks as their starting defensive ends. So we're going to be running a lot of clips. You guys are going to be running a lot of clips on this show during the course of the season where opposing teams, your eyeballs go to Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney because, man, they are famous and good, and that's, of course, where this defense starts.
And they're freakishly athletic from the end positions as well. Okay, we've heard from Justin Reid. Reid talked a little bit about the style of the Browns offense and what he sees from the Browns.
They have a lot of downhill runs. But they're going to do stuff with their tight ends, with the tight end alignments, maybe try and sneak them out, have a tight end act like he's blocking, sneak out late, run across the formation. Sometimes have tight ends flash behind the line of scrimmage where they're in the off technique and run back behind the run, other direction. A lot of boots, play actions, things. They're going to run the ball, and then if they have some success with the run, it's going to open up the boots to where, we're going to be attacking to stop the run, and they're going to try and play action it. So it's a simple but effective philosophy. It's kind of the same thing that my college team did in college, but it's old school. It's old school. You know what I mean? It's get your jersey dirty and get ready to play.
Teams do more play action year over year past few years. What do you think is like the defensive counter to that?
To play action?
Yeah. It's like as the league
eye control. Yeah. Eye control, man. I mean that's what it is. I mean it's really simple. It's simple and difficult at the same time, right? Because if you have good eyes, then it should be easy because you know exactly what you're looking at and you're able to play it effectively. But if you don't, you get caught looking in the backfield, not reading whatever your key is, then that's when you see guys end up being wide open.
Old school. You got to like that. The Browns are old school. Get your jersey dirty.
Does that guy have a podcast? He's awesome.
Yeah.
I love NFL players when they take the time to get specific, but not so in the weeds that the average fan doesn't know what he's talking about. So, I mean, he just described, if you're a Browns fan and you want like a, paragraph description of how Kevin Stefanski wants to attack people, Justin Reid just gave it to you. And by the way, he said his old college team, that's Stanford. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about here, that again, it's not high flying, Big 12 run and shoot kind of stuff. It's a lot of tight ends. Stanford always has good running backs, and then you operate off of that. But we know that, like, the people, who were paying attention when they watched the Browns, not me, but like Scott Patsko and Ellis Williams, run game and then that boot action off the run game, Justin Reid knows it's coming. He knows it's coming, and it's probably still going to work for the Browns this week because it's what they do. And you see that some of that boot, I think it was a boot action with Baker out to the left where he threw back across the field for the big play to Anthony Schwartz last week. And it's like, there's just wrinkles off of that stuff. But it's that same kind of fundamental thing where a player as smart as Justin Reid can absolutely diagnose what the Browns are going to do, but it doesn't mean Houston can stop it.
Yep, that's the beauty of the offense Kevin Stefanski has employed. You run the football really well, and all good things happen off of that. All right, Before I let you go, prediction. What do you think happens Browns-Texans?
What is it, 12.5?
Yeah,
I think the Browns are favored by.
Yeah, 12.5, 13.
I'd give that. I do think my initial instinct, I don't know if you know this, Dave, I'm a bit of a contrarian. So my initial instinct was like, hey, I'm all in on the Browns this year. They played well against Kansas City, but it's like, well, could it be a slog a little bit? Is Tyrod kind of competent enough? And then I just thought, no, I don't want to like contrarian myself into oblivion. I think this is not that they did anything wrong, but I think this is a show who they are kind of game. I don't know that Houston does a ton. Brandon Cooks is good. I don't know they do a ton offensively that's really going to threaten the Browns. And I just think if the Browns can come out at Kansas City and score touchdowns on their first 3 drives, there's a version of that where they do that not just for 30 minutes, but for 60. So I think I had the Browns win in something like 38-13 or something where it's kind of good on both sides, hold Houston down and have your way on offense. But I'm going to stick with the idea that let's let Baker sling a little bit and see what happens. That might be wrong, but I think the offense can kind of pick how it wants to win this game. So I think the Browns win easy and cover.
Yeah, I agree. It's moved up to 13 points, and it is the largest amount the Browns have been favored by since they came back in 1995. That's how big of a favorite they are. And I agree. I think they're going to win by 17, 21, maybe even 28 points. I think the crowd goes crazy, and I think the snowball keeps rolling on top of the Houston Texans Sunday. Doug Lesmerises, columnist for The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, as always.
All right, Doug Lesmerises. Make sure you read them. Pages of The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast will join us. Sports4CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue to talk Browns, getting ready for that home opener against the Texans Sunday, 1 o'clock over at First Energy Stadium. So Joe Woods, Browns defensive coordinator, talked about facing former Browns quarterback from a few years ago, Tyrod Taylor.
You know, he's been doing it for a long time. He probably doesn't get enough credit. I mean, he's a very good quarterback. I think he creates a lot of problems because of his mobility. He's not as tall, as Mahomes, but he's still mobile in the pocket, so you definitely have to have a good rush plan to keep him in the pocket and not let him extend plays.
Let's welcome in Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Kevan, again, Tyrod Taylor, an NFL quarterback, a pro's pro, but does not present the challenges that Patrick Mahomes did a week ago.
No, he does not. He's just a smart, savvy veteran quarterback that of course, the Texans brought in, and that's exactly what the Browns were looking for when they brought him in 2018 to kind of be that bridge until Baker was really ready. Of course, unfortunately, the injuries happened, the concussion happened, and Baker was in there. And on that Thursday night against the Jets, and the rest is history for quarterback history for the Browns over the last few seasons. But Tyrod Taylor is going to give you that veteran presence. They are 1-0. Yes, it was against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but when you win in the NFL, that gives you a lot of confidence, and a savvy veteran quarterback like Tyrod Taylor can help the team understand what it really means to take the success of 1 week to the next and what kind of preparation and work has to go from week 1 to week 2 to be even better.
Yeah, and again, they against Jacksonville, they look like a well-coached football team. I mean, they don't have a ton of talent. They played well enough to win. They didn't hurt themselves. They didn't have a lot of penalties, didn't turn the ball over. And when you do that, you're giving yourself a chance to win in the NFL. Pro Football Focus.
And if they do that on the road, they'll give themselves a good chance at First Energy Stadium, too. And that's exactly what they talked about, the Browns talked about after the Kansas City game. You can't make those mistakes, those little mistakes on the road. You got to play near perfect on the road, and especially in a hostile environment. We know First Energy Stadium is going to be rocking, but that team is going to come in with a lot of confidence and going to have to find a way to kind of assert their dominance in terms of the Browns in this game to really be able to take control of it. And the Browns are going to have to avoid those costly turnovers, because while it was against a rookie quarterback, the Houston Texans can turn you over, and they can play pretty sound football in that Lovie Smith defense, especially on the back end, that defensive backfield.
All right, Pro Football Focus. Key matchup for each and every game for the Browns. Laramie Tunsil, left tackle, and a good one for the Texans against Myles Garrett. And I think the thought is if Tunsil can't hold out Garrett, rest of the line's in trouble as well.
This defense starts and ends with Myles Garrett, Dave. It just does. In order to get off the field on third down, which they did not do very well last week in Kansas City, it's got to start and end with Myles Garrett. Now, I could argue, and it's arguing minute points, but I could say that on the other side with Marcus Cannon or Charlie Heck, if he has to come in at right tackle against Jadeveon Clowney, if Clowney can win that matchup, that might make it easier for Myles Garrett. Yes, Tunsil's very good, and he's probably going to be able to handle Garrett at times one-on-one, but there's always going to be those schemes in the offensive line for opposing teams on how to take care of Myles Garrett and not allow him to get to the quarterback. If Clowney can get to the quarterback and can cause pressure, cause havoc in the backfield, as they did on that final third down defensively last week, then that'll make it a whole lot easier on Garrett, and that's exactly what we talked about all off season with these two. If they can kind of coexist like that, it just makes those shifts, those moving parts along our defensive line a lot easier to call from Joe Woods' standpoint.
And the flip side of it is there's always that thing in the back of your head with Mahomes and his freakish athleticism. Now, Tyrod Taylor's a guy that will hurt you out of the pocket, but it's not quite at the level of Patrick Mahomes. So I'd expect the defense to get after him a little bit more, because there just aren't the playmakers on the Texans offense that the Chiefs had. Lovie Smith, the defensive coordinator for the Texans, talked about the Browns' commitment and ability to run the football and how important it is.
Most defense, you start off trying to stop the run, and they have two excellent running backs, real good offensive line, three good tight ends, and there's a commitment, though. When you say you're a running football team, is there a commitment to running the football? We offensively have a commitment to running the football. Cleveland definitely has a commitment to running the football. Well, I'm a guy that never lives in the past. I can't tell you a lot about old girlfriends, anything like that. It's just, so I'm just going on what we're doing right now. The team has tackled pretty good. We have, and we expect to tackle well again. We'll need to. When you talk about, two great running backs like they have, you got to be able to get bodies there. First, running to the ball. Pursuit comes into it. As many people as possible to the ball and wrap up on them. You just look last week. The team that they played a good football team last week, and Kansas City didn't really stop them. So that's the challenge we have in hand.
And again, that's the defensive coordinator of the team you're getting ready to play that's saying the defense that faced them last week didn't stop this offense.
Sometimes coaches, of course, put messages to their players in what they're saying to the media too. So they're talking about it in the defensive rooms, all the different positions of what the Browns can do well. The Browns have committed to running the football. They are a run-first offense, and that helps the play-action fakes and all of those bootlegs from Baker Mayfield to kind of get out of the pocket and use his mobility to then get the ball in the hands of his playmakers on the outside. So they've really found a good balance. You're starting to see that identity more and more every single time this offense gets out on the field. Lovie Smith is going to be telling his defense in the rooms, but also here where everybody can take the clips, what they're focused on, giving credit to Cleveland for our run game, but also telling his defense, hey, this is what we got to focus on. If you haven't been doing your homework, you haven't been watching film, you best get back in that film room right now because we're still talking about it. We haven't played on Sunday yet. Got a lot of work ahead of us, and it is a challenge to kind of figure this offense out, especially with such a good play caller like Kevin Stefanski.
Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast and I can step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Max Kellerman will talk Baker Mayfield late in games, also keys to the Browns beating the Texans. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Welcome back, Sports4CLE. We continue talking Browns football, getting ready for the home opener against the Houston Texans Sunday, 1 o'clock, First Energy Stadium. So Max Kellerman on KJM, ESPN, talked about Baker Mayfield and his performance late in games.
Favre, yup, he'll turn it over and he'll blow it, but he does have extra. What I'm saying is if you don't have extra, then it will come down to those high leverage moments, and you can't mess those up.
But do we know Baker doesn't have extra?
Thank you. Like Favre? I don't think he has Favre's arm talent.
That's not what I said. I didn't say arm talent. I didn't say that. I said extra, which means that in those magical moments, do we not know if he can somehow Houdini his way out of it?
No. Okay, let me be very clear then. No, that's right. My point is, when you have Favre talent, you don't always have to show you can Houdini because people know, oh, that dude can if you have a cut below, right? Baker has a good, strong arm, accurate. He makes good, quick decisions. I'm not criticizing that way, but he's not Favre talent.
You know, Kevin, the thing that I hear when I hear that is I don't think you know what Baker has. Remember, he came into a team that was, 131-1 or whatever it was, and didn't have a lot of talent around him. Now he has a lot of talent around him, and the salary cap may peel some of that away. But you can't compare Favre, who was traded from his first team, by the way, to the Packers. Don't forget that. To Baker, where he is right now. I mean, we'll get a pretty good idea this year, next year, and probably the year after exactly, does Baker have it? I'm guessing we're going to find out he has more of it than the national people want to give him credit for right now.
He spent the first 3 seasons kind of hitting a reset button from year 1 to year 2, and then year 2 to year 3 with Baker, just because we're changing coaches mid-season and then the very next season and the season after that. So then it's new schemes, new language, new players coming in here as more talent continued to be added around Baker Mayfield. I don't know, like you said, Dave, I don't know that we know if Baker has it or has that extra as they were talking about in those clutch moments. I do know that Baker recognizes he has to perform in those moments because, yes, he was 75% completion percentage last week, threw for over 300 yards, and was accurate all day. Everybody's saying one of the best performances they've seen out of him in a long time. but when it mattered most, and even though he was trying to throw it away, it turned into a turnover, or it took away the opportunity for the Browns to continue a chance to try to go win that game. So I'm not saying he doesn't have it by just that one play. There have been instances where he has turned it over and the Browns are trying to come back. There's other times like Cincinnati. I know it's not to the caliber of Kansas City, nowhere near that, but still, it takes a lot. When you're going back and forth with a team like Cincinnati and a guy that can rip it like Joe Burrow, to have the ball last and make that play such a beautiful throw and a beautiful play by Donovan Peoples-Jones, there's some of that there. What can he be as he gets more comfortable with the players around him? And the second year of this scheme, let's see more opportunities like that, and let's see which side wins out. Is he lacking success or having a lot of success in those late game moments?
And again, everybody nationally wants to talk about Brett Favre and Tom Brady and what they were earlier in their career. And Ben Roethlisberger is another example. Ben Roethlisberger won earlier in his career because he had a good defense and he didn't hurt the team. Well, Baker Mayfield didn't have a good team around him early in his career. So again, pump the brakes on that. We'll find out what Baker Mayfield is, and I think Browns fans are going to be pretty happy with what they have. All right, before I let you go, how do you see this one playing out? What do you think the keys are for the Browns to beat the Texans?
First, I think it's interesting to see if Jedrick Wills is able to go, because I know he was listed as questionable on the injury report, and the injuries are unfortunately starting to mount. At least it is early in the season, but it's still starting to mount for the Cleveland Browns as they're still trying to establish an identity in 2021. But for the Cleveland Browns this week to have success and to get to 1-1, to take care of business at home in front of such a big crowd, it's going to be holding on to the football. You can't have those crucial fumbles or botched snaps or interceptions by Baker Mayfield. Again, a defense that likes to turn you over. Lovie Smith is going to kind of sit back in passing situations and force Baker to make those plays that we know he can make, but it's going to force it every single time. Baker's going to have to be patient, as he has been. And if you establish the run game still, even if there's moving parts on that offensive line, if you are still able to find a way, all the talk the Houston Texans are doing about our run game, if you are able to still establish the run, that makes this offense the potent offense we saw last week in the first half, because then it's so hard. You get your eyes caught in the backfield against the running backs, Baker's going to hit you over the top or hit you for a big play with one of his playmakers. So don't turn the ball over and continue to establish dominance along the offensive line and see if you can build on some of that late game success with your defensive line as well.
I think the other thing is I think if the Browns get out to an early lead and put a couple scores on the board early, then all of a sudden you get the Texans kind of going, man, are we as good as we played in week one, or is this just, is this a mismatch? And I think that's going to be a key. Taking care of the ball, absolutely. Get out to a lead early, and then just let the crowd start going crazy and have some fun.
That's what I was just about to say. You get that crowd going. They're already going to be crazy at the start, and once kickoff happens, but you keep them going, you get them to a whole nother level. It is going to be, they are relentless in that stadium, and is going to make life very, very difficult for the Houston Texans in that regard.
There's about 30 years of pent-up frustration for Browns fans that they want to let out on Sunday. Kevan Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Appreciate the time and the insight as always. Appreciate it. Thanks, Kevan.
Always appreciate you having me on. Thank you, and have a great weekend, guys.
You too as well. Kevan Arnold, Voice of the Land podcast. Make sure you listen to him. That'll do it for us on this edition of Sports4CLE. Monday scheduled guests, Browns beat reporters Dan Lobby and Ellis Williams. We will talk about the Browns-Texans game that will be played Sunday. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you again Monday at 4 o'clock, Sports4CLE.